Live. Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Drop in the Gloves. Our second take, our first intro, got a little sidetracked. I tell you what, Tim, my potty mouth is going through the roof here. We got called out in Patreon by some of the members there, and I just did it again to start the show. It's out of control. I got to really focus in and realize what I'm saying because it has an impact. So we'll actually throw it on Patreon, the intro that we didn't do because it was not good.
There's a good incentive to join the Patreon, get access to the Slack channel, because we're going to drop that little intro only there. But we're here to talk about some other stuff today.
My intrusive thoughts. Yeah, we were kind of not scratching our heads, but trying to throw around different ideas of what to do with this episode on Wednesday. And, what do you want to do? This and that and the other. And all of a sudden we wake up Friday morning. Plenty of hockey news. Lots of stuff to talk about. We got a coach firing. We got a star player on the move. We got other stuff to talk about. Insider tradings. Different teams maybe making different moves at the deadline. So there's a lot to break down. But first, let's just go to the big news. Jacob Trouba, 30-year-old captain of the New York Rangers. Last year, did they win the President's Trophy last year?
Yeah.
I think they did.
No, did Vancouver?
Well, I think it was the Rangers. President's Trophy win. I'm gonna call it here. Probably wasn't. But anyways, 30-year-old captain of the New York Rangers is officially on the market. Chris Drury and head coach Peter Laviolette unequivocally agree. They're on the same page. This guy has to be off the blue shirts. They got to go. Either waivers or a trade. This is a big deal. A long time coming in a lot of people's minds. But I have a lot of thoughts on this, Tim. But what do you think? Jacob Trouba on the move. Good, bad? What's going on in New York?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably good in that it's the right move, but it's weird that we've gotten to this point because it hasn't been that long since he was given the captaincy. Was it last summer or the summer before? Like, he's relatively new to wearing the C for an original six franchise. And I remember at the time, it felt a little strange. It felt like Kreider would have been the better fit, but clearly they felt something. They saw something in him on the bench, in the room, whatever. And here we are before the end of the year, and he's already on the move. And the report first broke that he was not going to play today, despite being healthy. And I thought it was one of those healthy scratch situations, but no. He is done playing for the Rangers. If these reports are true, he has played his last game already.
Yeah, he is entering his sixth season of an 8-year, $8 million deal. He signed with the New York Rangers when he came over in 2019. So he's been there a long time. He has been steady as she go defenseman. He came in from the Winnipeg Jets, and he was a stud when he came over from Winnipeg, and he played really well for New York. I think he lost a little bit of his offensive edge coming to New York. He focused on hitting, focused on defense, rightfully so, because they had a stacked team, and he didn't have to maybe focus on the offensive end as much as he did in Winnipeg. But he makes too much money. When you look at this move, when you look at this consequence of just the team faltering, they have not been playing well of late. It screams of a guy who's a good NHL player, a hell of an NHL player. Any GM would be lucky to have this guy on their team. He just makes too much money. It's the nature of the beast. You sign that $8 million contract, and when the team starts to fail, someone has to go. Someone head has to roll. And right now, it's the guy who doesn't put many points on the board, gets maybe beat a little bit too often, and he's the easiest target. So he needs to go, and that's what's happening here. And Chris Drury, it's funny how the no move clauses, the partial move clauses, the protection that players put on their contracts to make sure they're not going to move. Chris Drury is just circumventing this right away. He's kind of putting Jacob Trouba in a tough spot because he said, well, waive your no trade clause or you're going to go down to Hartford. So what would you rather do? Do you want to play in the NHL for another team who wants you, or I'll send you down to Hartford? Oh, by the way, the teams that want you, not very desirable. They're not the Stanley Cup contenders that you would like to go to. They're teams that are somewhat rebuilding, maybe on the bubble, looking for a boost. Those are the teams that want you, who you would typically put on your no-move clause list because you don't want to go play there. So it's a pretty interesting move by Chris Drury to play this hardball type negotiation with their captain. Like, this is your captain of your team. So what's everyone saying to him in New York or the Twitter sphere?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Is like, does this burn the relationship? Because there's always some degree of that when you move a star player anyway, and a guy that doesn't want to be moved, and there's a little bit of like, animosity that can happen. But there's also a right way to do it, and this is kind of where there's multiple sides to this. Because if you're saying to your captain, the guy that you put the C on, the guy that you're paying $8 million a year for, saying, you either need to accept the offers that we're getting, because there are some offers on the table. We'll talk about them, or you're getting waived, like you said. To which point they can, like Columbus, for example, is one of the main teams, and this has happened before, and where they can say, okay, I don't want to go there. Well, we'll waive you, and that team will claim you anyway. Like there's ways around it, and this is where I think the player has been a little bit put into a corner. And there are all these reports about. Drury has spoken a lot with Trouba in the last couple of days in small groups. I'm guessing among the other guys wearing the letters on their jerseys and one-on-one. Kreider was asked about it this morning in practice. He said he doesn't want to talk about it. He said he won't talk about that or the Team USA thing. He wants to talk about just the game tonight. So whatever.
I'm not talking about it.
So yeah, and then Pierre LeBrun said that he's hearing that the Rangers had multiple deals on the table involving Trouba, but they all need his consent to waive the modified no trade, and that's a 15-team list. The sense that Trouba was going to sleep on it last night and decide today. There's a potential threat of waivers here, like we say. It's 1:30-ish right now, so by the time this episode drops, the move might already be done.
Well, let's address is Chris Drury in the right? Will this affect his reputation or players wanting to go play in New York? I think he's played this out the correct way. He has given Jacob Trouba a chance to be traded. He's talked to them. He's been, I think, very well informed throughout this whole process. There isn't this secretive behind the scenes negotiations going on between Chris Drury and everybody else and other GMs trying to get him off the team. I think he's done it the correct way. And now he's forced to play this hand, the one that he didn't want to play, because from all accounts, he tried to move him last year. He tried to move him in the offseason. He's been trying to unload this contract for a long time. But Jacob Trouba has blocked it every step of the way because he doesn't want to leave. So, no, I like what Chris Drury is doing here. He's like, my team sucks. Those two other players you listed, I'm sure Chris Drury would like to get out from under those contracts as well. Or sorry, the one. I was thinking of Mika Zibanejad because he's wearing a letter. He was in the meeting as well. They have a lot of bad contracts on this team, a lot of aging contracts. So this is the nature of the beast. You sign all these deals when the guys are young, when they're in their prime, when they're playing their best. But then once they get to the last 2 or 3 years of those deals, it's very rare where they're still producing and a very valuable player for the money that they're getting paid. This is the 6th year of the 8-year contract, so he's obviously deteriorating his play.
Yeah, and this is kind of a unique situation because you have to remember the person too. And I think one of the things you've done a good job of over the years on this show is talking about the human side of this and how the players, they get tons of money, you don't feel sorry for them, but they're still human beings. And a lot of them are obviously the only people who work in their families. They're supporting their families. They make more than enough to do that. But Trouba's in a situation. His wife is a doctor. She's a medical residency in New York, and so there's more than one career to take account for in this family that certainly is going to impact their decision. So it's more than just one person. There's a lot going through this young man's mind today. More than just the hockey aspect of it. So there's another thing to consider that's going to certainly impact his decision-making, where he's willing to go and whether he's willing to waive anything. But to your point, I think it's kind of out of his control because they can waive him anyway. And then at that point, any team can claim him.
Yeah, there is a human element, but I feel like people, and even at this point, I don't care about it too much. Right, like he's made $8 million this year. He's made $8 million for the last six years. He'll still continue to get that payment throughout this contract, and it's time to go. I think he's had a good run with the New York Rangers. He's had some very memorable moments, but it's time for him to move on. Like both parties, I think, agree to that. You think Jacob Trouba wants to go through this? You think he wants to be under constant rumors and this and that, and his name's being bandied about, and the fans want him gone? So it'll be interesting on where he goes. Where do you think, Tim, that he's going to land? Because if this has to end by midnight, if this is Cinderella, and he's got to be dealt or waived, which one do you see more likely, being traded or being waived?
Yeah, I think more likely traded. But there's a lot of factors that go into this. So let's first look at the teams that have the cap space to take him on right now without having to make another move. Mm-hmm. That's the Philadelphia Flyers, Canadiens, Ducks, Sharks, Utah, Blues, Flames, and Blue Jackets, which is like 8 of the 10 worst teams in the league. So like that's no surprise there. And there's some teams there that are like, you know what, Columbus is a team that I could play for. And even St. Louis, they're 4-0-1 since making the coaching change. They're going to be competing for a playoff spot. So it's not like he's going from one of the better teams to a dumpster fire. But when you look at the rumors that are actually surrounding this, it's really a narrower list. Emily Kaplan reported that among the teams that are interested are Detroit Red Wings, Ottawa Senators, Buffalo Sabres, and Columbus Blue Jackets. It's weird that we're in this spot. All four of those are exciting in some ways. I think a lot of those teams need another piece in the back end, but that's the other part is like, how valuable is he at this point? And should the Rangers have to give something up to get another team to even take on his contract?
This feels like another Erik Karlsson case where, in my opinion, I think the Rangers should have to package something with Jacob Trouba in order to get rid of him. He still has 2 years left on his contract, or 1 year. Sorry, he's under contract next year as well. That's $8 million next year for this guy. So I'm usually off when it comes to these games. I don't know what GMs are thinking, and I was shocked when the Sharks got the return what they got for the Erik Karlsson deal or Pittsburgh. That's more on Dubas than anything, but yeah, you would think the Rangers would have to put something in there because they're not going to retain any salary. But I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because the good thing is like his contract expires next season, so another year and a half, which means he's pretty tradable, right? And you could see a situation like the Montreal Canadiens did with Sean Monahan, where they got a first for taking his contract on, and then less than a year later they flipped him for another first. Like that's the kind of thing where let's just use Montreal as an example. They could get a little something for him. You get a season or so worth of play out of him where he can, like, he's still an NHL defenseman. He's overpaid, yes. He's still a good defenseman. He can stand up for his teammates. He can be a voice in the locker room. There's a lot of teams like Montreal, like Detroit, like Utah that maybe could use some of that, what he's bringing to protect their younger players. And then you trade him next year at the deadline and you get even more for him, at which point it'll be like 3 months left on his contract. So he'll be a very tradable asset at that point.
Yeah, I agree. That's if his play comes back. Tim, he's been atrocious this year.
Yeah, but the Rangers have all been pretty atrocious. Yeah,
but just based on his, if you look at his metrics and just where his career is heading, the last 2 years have been awful. Yeah, just all the advanced stuff, all the analytics, all just the basic stuff, plus minus points, whatever. It's trending downward. So maybe a new place, a better situation. He reverts back to that young guy who was a stud, but boy, oh boy, this is not the same Trouba we saw even 2 years ago in the playoffs where he was just a force. So I don't know. I don't think this ends well for any team that acquires him. I really don't see a happy ending here because he's going to go there. He will be upset, especially if it's the four teams that are being bandied about. Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo, Columbus. People have been saying Ottawa, not a chance. Darren Dreger said that's no chance there whatsoever. If it's Detroit, Buffalo, or Columbus, do you think Jacob Trouba is going to be super pumped up to walk into that dressing room on day one after spending the last 6 years of his career in the New York Rangers, Times Square, captain in the Madison Square Garden, the roar of the crowd, and then you walk into Detroit, Little Caesars Arena, you walk into Columbus, you walk into Buffalo? Like, are you crazy? He is going to be miserable. He's going to be just a wet blanket. This is going to be a terrible situation for whatever team takes him on. I'm not touching him if I'm another GM.
I would like to think that he would be professional about it, right? And say, hey, listen, it didn't work out. I'm going to give you my best as long as you're paying me and whatever new team. There's some fun. Like Columbus is a fun story. We spent a lot of time talking about them.
But you have to put in the human factor of like the Rangers are in a playoff hunt right now. You know, they're in the mix. They're always a Stanley Cup contender with the stars that they have. You're going to block that shot. You're going to be fired up if you're going to play the Washington Capitals and Alex Ovechkin. You're jacked up playing the New Jersey Devils. Your state rivals. I know they're in a different state, but just right down the road from them. You don't get that same feeling when you go play for the Detroit Red Wings and you're sniffing the basement and you get to play the Senators and the Sabres and the Canadiens and you get waxed by the Panthers and the Bruins and the Lightning and the Leafs. You don't have that same sense of rivalry, that animosity that you build throughout the years. So no, I think the human aspect plays a case in this where it's like, I don't want to be here. My wife's not here because she's a doctor somewhere else saving lives. This sucks. What am I doing? I've already made $1 gajillion. Why am I here? So I feel like he'll show up, but mentally, when I went to St. John's, Newfoundland, you think I'm diving to block shots? You know what I mean? I'm playing in the AHL. What I did do, I cheated a lot defensively to try to score goals, and that's why my points went through the roof. I was lighting up the score sheet. I was just jumping guys who even tried to fight me. I'm like, screw this. I'm going to jump you. Start the fight. Whatever. I'm going to win it. And I was just not checked out. I tried my hardest, but I wasn't putting myself in a situation where I didn't want to be. I tried to light guys up on the blue line as a defenseman, anticipate things. I'm like, this guy's going to get a suey, heads up, here comes Uncle John. And then he would pass it around me, and my D partner gets a 2-on-1. I'm like, I don't care. I just completely checked out. That's how I think he'll play.
But you weren't in the NHL anymore. Like, this is a different
Careful.
story. And this is a 30-year-old guy.
That
How old were you when
hurts.
that whole thing went down?
35.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference there, right?
Yeah, true. He has a future in the game. I did not. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and he's still gonna wherever he goes, he's gonna get 18 to 22 minutes a night. Like
I was playing 18 in St. John's. I was on the power play.
I pulled up your stats while you were talking. 4 points, 2 goals in 27 games in the AHL.
Told you, career highs
that year. Yeah,
you a full season. That's 12 points.
That's okay. Yeah,
that's crappy in the AHL. I get it, but for me, that's terrific. What do they get in Houston? Do you have that up there? My stats from Houston.
Yeah, let's see. Houston Aeros. So first year, 6 points and 65.
Not bad.
Next year, 3 points and 64, but 3
Not
goals.
Good.
0 assists.
Not good.
And then the final year, half a year, 4 points and 44.
So I get a point every 10 games. That's what you're saying.
You're also averaging about 120, 140 PIMs every year.
That's when hockey was hockey. You know what I mean?
When men
People
were men.
loved it. I was watching something about the NBA, how Steph Curry ruined basketball. And I watched this clip. It was the Lakers versus the Nuggets, and they went a full 3 minutes back and forth of every guy just jacking up a three. And this clank, 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 clank. I think it was 7 or 8 shots in a row that they missed. And it's funny. It is in every single sport. A team does well, and it's a copycat league because no one is inventive and no one wants to try to do anything different. Oh, they're doing well. We're going to copy that team. And now everybody's trying to be a 3-and-D team, and you don't have the players to do that. So everybody's throwing up 3-pointers, and the scoring hasn't gone up. It's the same in hockey. Everybody wants to be this and that and the other. Oh, these guys are physical. They won the cup. We got to be physical. These guys are skilled. We got to be skilled to win the cup. So I just saw this clip, and it was really great. And it just made me think of hockey. Like, what is the trend these days that everybody's trying to do? Is it the Connor McDavids of the world? Is it the skilled team? I think it's the young, fast defenseman up in the rush, fleet-footed defenseman, and it never flies in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Once you hit the playoffs, it's the teams like the Florida Panthers who can grind you out, who can shut you down. Those are the teams that win the Stanley Cup. The Lightning learned how to do it. The Panthers know how to do it. The Avalanche did it. The St. Louis Blues did it. Those are the teams that win the Stanley Cup. It's never the Oilers. Never the Oilers.
Yeah.
Although they were 1 game away. They got close.
I know, but anyways, you're right. It's not the Lane Hudsons that get you there once the
Has he scored yet, by the way, Lane?
No. I think he's at 12 assists or something. But it's Barbashev. That's the player that puts you over the top.
Damn right it is.
It's
and Jacob Trouba.
In Trouba.
I ran into Goody when I was in San Jose. He's doing great. You know what I mean? He not on the ice. Off the ice, he's doing great. I saw his new baby, saw his wife. He seems to be doing great. He grew this mustache, and I don't know what it is. The mustache was popular for a little bit. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have mustaches. I think its expiration date is over. Like, we need to get rid of him now. I don't. It's not ironic anymore.
It's back.
It's not. It's not. The Stormy Chromers are back that I'm wearing right now.
I don't know what that is, but
just sick.
In northern Michigan, you need it.
I've had it for a long time. But anyways, back to let's put a bow on this Jacob Trouba case. It's midnight, December 6th. Where is he? Is he headed on a bus to Hartford? Or does he have a ticket going to another NHL team? Where is he, Tim?
I don't. That's a good question. Would he even report to Hartford?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. No escrow? I'm saving another 18% of my contract? Absolutely. I'm not getting New York State tax? Oof, baby. He would go from making, just put this in perspective, everybody, he makes $8 million a year in New York State. I'm guessing he lives out of the state because he's smart, so he doesn't pay the city tax. You whack that rate in half. That's $4 million. Escrow gets escrowed on the $8 million, not the post-tax. So he's getting around, we'll say 15% escrow on $8 million is what? $1.2 million? So you're knocking off $5.2 million right off of that $8 million. So you're left with what? 3.8 is what he's pulling in. That's incredible. You go from the Rangers, you go to Hartford, Connecticut. State tax is a lot, I would say, better in Connecticut. You're not paying that escrow. So he goes from making 3.8 to, let's say, 5.2. That's a huge amount of money. So he's probably going to love it. Even I noticed the uptick. I don't want to keep bringing up about me. I was making 21,000 every 2 weeks when I was with Arizona. Hashtag Montreal, but mostly Arizona. I go down to St. John's where I finished the season. It was like a month and a half, 2 months. I went from 21,000 to like 35,000 every 2 weeks. Like it was a big jump. Maybe 30,000, but it was a noticeable pay jump, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's too bad." I'm like, I was out anyways. This is a nice little couple extra 20, 30,000 I'm getting every couple weeks. So,
plus your season was basically the John Scott press tour everywhere you went. So.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's keep talking about that. All right, so you think he's going where, Tim? Gun to your head right now. Where's he going?
I think it's Columbus. I think the trade happens this afternoon.
Okay. For my sake. And for the listener's sake, I hope it's Detroit.
Yeah.
Because I am going to take a huge dump on this team if they get Jacob Trouba. And Mo Sider is going to go into the restroom and pound his head against a wall for an hour. He's like, we already got 4 of these guys. We're getting another one? We got Hall. We got Sherratt. We got Petrie. What the hell do we need another big guy who can't move the puck? Oh, I hope it's Detroit. The eyes are playing. Just going down in flames with all these I almost did it again.
We need to move on.
What's in my coffee? All right, moving on. The Chicago Blackhawks have made a move. Long time coming. I think I said it last episode. Something needs to happen. Kyle Davidson, something needs to happen. Head coach Luke Richardson. Well, looks like those guys do listen to my podcast. Maybe you do listen, Chicago Blackhawks. They finally made a move. They have fired a 3-year coach, Luke Richardson, and said, adios. Obviously not mutual. Luke Richardson enjoyed coaching for the Chicago Blackhawks. Players loved him, unequivocally. And I've talked to many players. He's a great coach. Everybody around the organization loves this guy. But you need the coach to win. You need the coach to teach the players. You need the coach to progress the franchise. And he was dealt a tough card, Tim. He was given a team bereft of talent. Nothing. The cupboards were bare. The prospect pool was bare. They went all in for years and years and years trying to win that Stanley Cup with Taves and Kane and Keith and Seabrook and Sharp and Hossa and all the rest. There had to be a change. And he was dealt a crappy team. He has not progressed them. They fired him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, not surprising, given the start that they've had. They're the worst team in hockey. But this feels a little bit like totally different situation, but similar to Montgomery in that there are these organizational and I would say roster major issues that are being pinned on the coach. Where like he's the first one to go. You don't trade the players. You don't fire the upper management. It's the coach that's out the door. And I don't know what you'd expect him to do differently. And I don't watch the games as much as, you follow that team. Maybe there's lineup stuff that he should have done differently. And what can you do with a lineup full of Foligno's in your top 6 and Kurashev and Taylor Hall's not healthy and Donato is the best player on your team all of a sudden because no one else can do anything. And obviously Bedard, but like it's weird. I don't know what else he could have done.
Well, he was given a lot of leeway the last 2 years just because of the roster. Everyone understood what was happening. 2 years ago, it was a race for Connor Bedard, the race for the number 1 draft pick, and we got him. Last year, it was Bedard. We didn't have any talent around him. This year, it was we want to see some progress. Expectations were slightly higher because of who they brought in. You bring in Teuvo Teravainen, Taylor Hall's healthy, you bring in Tyler Bertuzzi, you shore up the back end. You had Vlasic, you had Seth Jones, you bring in Alex Martinez, you bring in TJ Brody, Connor Murphy's healthy. These expectations start to kind of mount, and then you go out there and you lose. And that's fine because the expectations weren't high. I think what cost him his job was Connor Bedard's frustrated. And Connor Bedard is suffering. And you see this, and the owners see it, and the GMs see it, and they're watching the ice, and they see this guy slamming the door. They see this guy's breaking his stick. They see him doing interviews after the game saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where my game's at. And if you're watching this and you see this 19-year-old kid that frustrated, Tim, and he is your future, current face of the franchise, he's your cornerstone, and you see him already being frustrated and just angry, and he's already suffering, you have to make a change. And it has to happen now because this can't continue. You have to make sure that that one guy, even though we're losing, that one guy is okay. And he's not okay this year. And you saw it last year when he was a rookie. Yeah, they were losing. Yeah, times were tough. Everybody was injured. He was still having fun. He was still putting points on the board. He was still being productive. He was growing in his game. He's not happening this year. He's regressing right now. And I think that's the huge thing. I don't care. Nobody cares that they're losing, really. It's Connor Bedard. What is going on with this kid? He took a bad penalty last night, broke his stick going to the bench. He's pissed. And they have to make a change. And hopefully, management and ownership is hoping that Connor Bedard can turn the corner and be happy, be that guy again. Be that kid that we saw last year. Because he's 19, but this can go sideways fast with these young superstars. We've seen it before. I've witnessed it with my own eyes. They get used to losing. They get those bad habits. They get those bad feelings. And then next thing you know, it's 4 or 5 years down the road and they still haven't progressed at all. So I feel bad for Luke Richardson. Great guy. But just it is what it is. You have to pay the piper. And I got one more point. I don't think he's a good coach for young kids, Tim. I don't. I feel like he would be a great coach for a veteran-laden team where the team already gets how to play hockey. The team knows how to win, but they just need a change of voice, a cultural change. I don't think he knows how to navigate young players. And yeah, they brought in these vets that I mentioned. This is still a very young team. You have very young players on the back end. You have young players up front who still don't know how to play the game. And I don't think Luke Richardson has the X's and O's in his back pocket to teach these guys. Okay, Connor Bedard, I need you to go here. Makiev, go here. Lucas Reichel, I need you to do this. He wants a veteran team who already knows how to do those things, and he's going to encourage them to go through a wall for him. You know what I mean? And motivate them. That's the type of coach that I think he is. I think the Hawks need a different type of coach to come in and do X's and O's and make it dummy-proof. My first year in the league, I had Jacques Lemaire. He made it dummy-proof for every single player. He wasn't a big motivational coach, but you would come to the rink, he would have every player, their 3 things they had to do for the game, and it was just idiot-proof. And it was beautiful because I was a young player. I said, okay, don't cross the red line, make a good first pass, and hit people. That's it. That's all I have to do. And he made it so easy for a player. And I don't think that's what's happening now in Chicago.
So they've replaced him with Anders Sorensen, who was the head coach down in Rockford, and the plan is for him to take over for the rest of the season, and from that point, they'll make a decision whether they hand it to him or bring someone else in. And I was pulling up this quote where they were asked about why not give it to Derek King, where it leaves the assistant coach, and Davidson said basically that they wanted to just reach out a little bit further to make sure that it's a new face, a new voice, potentially a new system.
I like that, yeah.
Enough to change it, because bringing in the head coach like the Bruins did, replacing the head coach with an assistant isn't enough of a change that you can expect anything different. So hopefully Sorensen comes in and takes a new gear into Bedard and the rest of the team around him.
And no one's expecting them to just strike gold and all of a sudden start winning games, but they've looked just lackluster. And there really is no excuses. They have some talent. They should be in every single game. So just show some pushback, some fight. But we'll see what happens. Is this a case where Coach Q comes back next year? Triumphantly resurrecting the Chicago Blackhawks, or is that ship sailed?
If Coach Q comes back to the NHL, it will not be in Chicago. No way.
Oh, you heard it here first. You heard it here first. Tim's planting his flag.
I think
Q will not be on the Hawks. Yeah, it probably would be a bad.
And if I ever make the NHL, it will not be for the Chicago Blackhawks either. So,
and if I ever work TV again, there's a good chance it will not be. All right, moving on. We got some quick hits, Tim. What are we doing?
Yeah, Pierre LeBrun said that Dallas and Minnesota are both keeping an eye on Brock Nelson, who's going to be a UFA after the season. A lot of interest in him, and he's a guy that obviously made the Team USA roster, which we didn't really spend any time on, but that was a little bit of a surprise too. But good player. He's one of those guys where you kind of forget about, and then you see what he does in the playoffs and these different tournaments. You're like, yeah, he's really good. He's one of the more underrated players in the whole league. So he could be a difference maker for either one of those teams that they
Oh, hell
acquire.
yeah. 6'4", 220, 230, a big moves fairly well for a guy of that size.
Great hands.
He puts points up, Tim. You can lock him in for 60, 65 a year. Like, that's it. And he doesn't complain. He just does his job. Him and Anders Lee, two great, just professional, big-bodied forwards who get the job done. Now that would be a guy I'm going for if I'm a GM. I'm not even taking a call on Jacob Trouba. If I want to win the cup, right here, Brock Nelson. It's a shoo-in. He can play the center. He can play the wing. He's a good dude. I skated with him back in the day. Same agent, Ben Hankinson. So I skated with him quite a bit. He's a hell of a talent. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Marty Necas, we know, has been doing pretty
Nachos!
special stuff. Now he is the fastest player to reach 40 points in Carolina franchise history, and they've had a lot of good players. So what he's doing right now is really unbelievable. He leads the league in points. And do you think what would you say is the chances that he finishes the season first in points? Do you give him any chance of that?
Well, no? I shouldn't say zero, but it's highly unlikely. But he will be top 5, which is quite the feat for a player who was coached by Rod Brindamore, because that guy is he's defensive responsible. You got to play 200 feet. This isn't just a run and gun league. But he's playing fantastic. And the people in Slack on our Patreon are losing their marbles because, they're giving me a hard time. We call him the Walmart McDavid. And he is. He plays fantastic. The guy's lighting it up. But yeah, does he get to 100? I think that's the bigger question. Does he continue this throughout the season? He's played, 25, 26 games. He's averaging almost 2 points a game, 1.7 probably. Does he get to 100 points?
I'll say yes. I think because he can slow down and still reach 100 points. And so I think yes. I think he's going to be that guy.
Yeah, I don't know. His career high to date is 71 a couple of years ago. He had 53 last year, but he's just tearing it up this year. Absolutely tearing it up. I think he will slow down a little bit, but yeah, he's getting 100%. All right, what else we got, Tim?
Just the last thing here, the Nashville Predators. So we kind of joked, like maybe 2 weeks into the season, we heard that quote from Trotz where he said, "If we keep doing this, I might need to start selling." And we were joking because most of us had them as like Western Conference finalists going into the season. Now they're second in the league to the bottom in points. They have the worst goal differential in the NHL. I saw this stat too. They're the first team in the history of the league to sign 2 40-goal scorers in one offseason.
Marchessault and Stamkos.
Yeah, and yet their goals per game compared to last year is like a goal and a half less per game that they're scoring. So
it honestly does goes to show you, Tim, that it's more of continuity, familiarity, and how you gel with players, and you can't just throw talent on the ice and make it work. This is a prime example of that. You need that chemistry. Because these are talented guys. They should be putting points on the board. When you got Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, and even a Thomas Novak and a Gustav Nyquist. Gustav Nyquist last year was out of this world playing with Forsberg. Like, they were the best line in the league. And these guys can't find the back of the net for the life of them. Jonathan Marchessault finally scored versus the Leafs, and it was like off the dasher, up over the goalie wall and in the back of the net. So, boy, oh boy.
It occurred to me yesterday that when we were talking about Team Canada on Wednesday that no one even thought to mention Stamkos. And obviously based on like this performance so far this season, he doesn't deserve to be in the conversation. But it's weird to think that a healthy Steven Stamkos at his age is not even in the mix for Team Canada. That's really, really strange.
He's 34. Yeah.
The last thing is the 2:00 deadline just passed, and Trouba, per Elliot Friedman, is not on waivers. So he will not be on waivers. It could change, obviously, but nothing has to happen overnight. But more than likely, he's going to be traded.
That would be unbelievable. So check back Monday, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, also Patrick Laine scored again. Guy's on a heater. Yeah. 2 goals, 2 games. It's fun to watch. He's a great story. Did you hear the Bell Center just erupt every time he scores? It's such a great story. Yeah, it really is. I'm happy for that guy. Yeah, I'm happy for him. All right, everybody. I'm happy for you guys. Because you're going to have a nice weekend. You're going to report back here on Monday. We can talk about everything. Thanks for listening. We appreciate the support. Get out there and have some fun. Cheers, everybody.